Welcome back to Sugarbee, where we dive deeper into the worlds of time travel, destiny, and the stories that refuse to let go. And today, the past is not just returning, it's roaring back with a vengeance. Season 8 of Outlander isn't just another chapter. It's the moment where every choice Claire and Jamie ever made, every person they saved, every enemy they created, and every timeline they touched finally demands its price. Because this season asks one brutal question. What happens when the past rises and the future begins to fall? Stick around because what's coming for the Frasers is unlike anything they've ever faced. Time is cracking open. Enemies once forgotten are stepping through the shadows. And a man shaped by Jamie's past, a man with the power to move through time, is coming for the entire Fraser bloodline, not in one century, not in one timeline, but in all of them. And the first blow he strikes isn't with violence, but with a whisper that reaches both the 18th century and the future at Lolly, BROCH. Season 8 will change everything. Season 8 opens with a kind of uneasy stillness, the kind that doesn't soothe, but unsettle. Claire and Jamie Fraser finally return to Fraser's Ridge, the place that once felt like sanctuary, a place carved out of wilderness with blood, sweat, and prayers whispered in the dark. After the horrors of the Revolutionary War, they thought the Ridge would heal them, knit their wounds, and remind them who they were before battle turned every breath into survival. But the Ridge is not the same. The air feels heavier, colder, the trees stand too still, as if listening. Even the wind, which once carried the smell of pine and hearth smoke, now tastes different, sharp, metallic, wrong. It's as if the land itself remembers something they've forgotten. Jamie senses it first. He always does. His instincts, sharpened by years of war and a lifetime spent navigating danger, flare the moment his boots touch home soil. He pauses along the tree line, eyes narrowing as if searching for a shadow that slipped away just as he arrived. He feels watched, but not by friend or neighbor. It feels older, deeper, a presence he hasn't felt since the days when British soldiers hunted him through the highlands. It's the same cold dread that crawled beneath his skin right before the worst battles of his life. Claire notices Jamie's tension, but she feels something else, something not quite physical, something that thrums under her skin like a distant heartbeat. She sets her medical bag down outside the cabin and heads toward her garden, wanting to check on the herbs and tools she left behind. But the moment she steps into the soft earth, her breath catches footprints, fresh ones, human but not Jamie's, not Eon's, not anyone from the Ridge. They lead close to her surgical tent, then disappear as if the person simply vanished. She kneels, touching the edge of a print, noticing its depth, its direction, the way the heel digs just slightly deeper, as if the person stood still here, watching the house, watching them. When she calls Jamie over, the prints are already fading with the sun's warmth, but the unease remains. Jamie crouches beside her, studying the ground like a hunter tracking prey. His jaw tightens, the muscles in his neck flexing with the quiet understanding that something has crossed into their lives. And it did so boldly. But Claire's moment of true fear doesn't come from the footprints. It comes a few hours later, while Jamie unloads the wagon. Claire walks to the edge of the porch and rests her hand on a small stone embedded in the foundation, a stone they placed there years ago, symbolizing new beginnings. The moment her fingers touch it, a vibration pulses up her arm. Soft, almost musical, but unmistakable. It's the same hum she heard at Cray Na Dun. Claire pulls her hand back sharply, heart pounding. Stones don't sing unless time is shifting, unless a traveler is near, unless the world is beginning to crack open again. She looks to Jamie, but she cannot bring herself to tell him yet, not until she understands what this means. Because the Ridge is trying to tell them something. The past is stirring, and the Ridge, the land that has always protected them, feels the danger long before they do. Far in the future at Lely, where modern life should feel predictable, safe, and grounded, Brianna Fraser Mackenzie begins to sense a disturbance that has nothing to do with deadlines, machines, or faulty light bulbs. It feels older, ancient, even like a whisper from a century she thought she'd finally escaped. It starts small, a folded piece of paper stuck beneath the windshield wiper of her car. At first, Brianna doesn't think much of it. Maybe a flyer, maybe an advertisement. But as she pulls the paper free and sees the handwriting jagged, deliberate, her stomach drops. Some debts never fade. She looks around the Lelybrock driveway, scanning for movement. Nothing, only birdsong, the distant rumble of a tractor, and the sound of the breeze moving through the trees. Still, something feels wrong, like eyes have only just turned away. Brianna brings the note inside. Roger, trying to ease her worry, laughs it off. Probably a prank. Teenagers. Who else would write something so dramatic? But Bree knows better. She's lived in a world where history hunts the living, where time chooses its favorites, where enemies don't always stay in the century they were born in, and the handwriting, something about it lingers in her mind like a faint echo. The second message arrives 2 days later, this time, slipped under the door of Roger's office, placed carefully as if someone wanted them to know, I was here. I got close. The paper reads, some families must pay. Roger's smile fades. This is no prank. Brianna's heart pounds. She feels it again, that echo, that vibration in the back of her mind. The same subtle shift in the air she felt the day her mother disappeared through the stones. It's a pull, a warning, a pressure like the atmosphere before a storm. She tells Roger she thinks someone from another time is looking for them. The room falls completely silent, but the worst message hasn't come yet. One evening, while Bree tucks Mandy into bed, Jamie comes running down the hallway, pale, breathless, eyes wide with fear. He grabs his mother's arm with trembling hands. Mama, they're singing. A cold chill slips down Brianna's spine. She kneels in front of her son. The stones, she asks softly. Jamie nods, tears gathering in his eyes. Like before, but louder, like they're warning us. The stones never sing without reason, not to everyone, and not at random. Jamie's gift, the ability to hear what others cannot, is not a blessing today. It is a signal, a flare fired into the darkness. Someone has touched time. Someone has crossed. But worst of all, Jamie hears something else beneath the stone song, a voice. A tone not of longing or loss, like other travelers Bree has known, but of anger, pure, sharp, focused. Brianna feels it now too, that pressure, that dread curling around her spine. Someone isn't coming to reunite with family. Someone isn't searching for love, hope, or home. They're searching for the Frasers, not to find them, but to destroy them. The past isn't reaching forward, it's rising, and Bree is the first to feel its claws. The villain of Season 8 emerges, not as a specter from Claire's long, complicated past, nor as a redcoat seeking power or vengeance. No, this enemy is something far more dangerous, far more calculated, and far more patient. His story began long before Claire and Jamie returned to the Ridge in another time, another century, across generations of hatred that had simmered, rotted, and finally crystallized into obsession. His name is whispered only once in the season's beginning, but the meaning behind it hits like a struck match. Elias McEnroy, the last son of a disgraced Scottish line. His father, Douglas McEnroy, had once attempted to climb into political prominence during the Jacobite years. He aligned himself with the wrong people, trusted the wrong allies, and believed in a destiny that never belonged to him. In his mind, the man who stole his future wasn't the king, nor the clans who turned their backs. It was one man, a young Highland warrior with wildfire in his eyes and the loyalty of men who followed him into the impossible. Jamie Fraser. After the Rising collapsed, Douglas lost everything, land, reputation, a chance at legacy, while Jamie survived, reinvented himself, and rose again from every ruin. The McEnroys sank into bitterness, and Douglas fed that bitterness directly into his son, whispering Jamie's name like a curse, a warning, a prophecy of all they could have been if the Frasers had not existed. So Elias grew up learning one story. Jamie Fraser destroyed your bloodline. One day, you must destroy his. But revenge alone wasn't enough. He needed access, power, and eventually, he found something far more dangerous. While other scholars studied history through ink and parchment, Elias followed rumors, whispers of travelers who vanished through stone circles, voices heard on ancient hillsides, tales of people returning from centuries gone. He tracked every myth, interviewed every eccentric academic, stole journals, maps, even relics believed to contain the energy of the stones. And over 20 obsessive years, Elias McEnroy did what no villain before him had accomplished. He learned how the stones work, not by accident or instinct, but by design. Where Claire walked through time with fear, confusion, and awe, Elias crossed with fury, calculation, and perfect control. Where Claire listened to the hum, Elias learned to bend it. He discovered that trauma, vengeance, and obsession sharpened the stone's call, and he used that power like a weapon. He practiced until he could step between centuries with precision, landing exactly where he wanted, exactly when he wanted. He became a traveler by mastery, a hunter across time, a man whose purpose was not exploration, but extermination. And now, he has crossed into Claire and Jamie's century with only one mission: erase the Fraser name from the past, the present, and every future still unwritten. Claire has always lived between two worlds. The world she can touch with her hands and the world she feels humming behind her bones. But now, in Season 8, those worlds begin to blur in ways she has never experienced, not even during her earliest crossings through the stones. It starts quietly, a flicker, a jolt, a shiver under her skin. One evening, while tending herbs near her medical garden, she suddenly sees Lelybrock engulfed in flames. Not a memory, not imagination, but a vision so real she can feel the heat on her face. The image vanishes in an instant, leaving her breathless. She tells herself she's tired, overworked, unsettled after returning from war. But deep down, she knows better. Something is shifting. Something is warning her. Then the visions grow sharper. She sees Brianna screaming her name. She sees Roger reaching toward her through a blinding white light. She sees Jamie, little Jamie, walking toward the stones with a trance-like calm, as though called by something ancient and terrible. Every vision feels like a piece of the future cracking apart, falling into a void where she cannot follow. Claire hides these moments from Jamie. She knows how he carries guilt, how he believes every danger, every threat, every wound is somehow tied to him. She cannot bear to show him the terror she feels. Not yet, but Jamie senses it anyway. He watches Claire more closely. He notices how her hands tremble without reason, how she wakes at night with sweat on her brow, how her eyes dart toward the forest as though searching for something she cannot explain. And Jamie, intuitive, protective, endlessly aware, feels the air shifting too. He feels hunted. The animals sense it as well. Birds scatter violently at dusk. The horses refuse to graze near the tree line. The ridge is too quiet, too tense, like the forest itself is holding its breath. Then, one morning, Claire opens the cabin door and finds something lying on the ground. A feather, black, long, unnaturally smooth. Not like any bird she recognizes. Not like anything native to the ridge at all. Jamie turns it in his hand slowly, and his blood goes cold. He has seen a similar symbol carved into a blade during the Jacobite years, left by a family who swore vengeance after the Rising. A family whose hatred, he thought, had died with the war. But now he knows, hatred doesn't die. It waits, it follows, it adapts. Jamie's voice grows low, almost a whisper. This is a warning. Claire asks him if it's Blackjack returning from the dead, or Stephen Bonnet haunting them from beyond the grave. Jamie shakes his head. No. Whoever this is, he's worse. Because the greatest danger is not the enemy you remember, it's the one hidden in the shadows of history, across centuries. In modern-day Lelybrock, Brianna and Roger begin experiencing the same unraveling, but here, it manifests in ways that defy science, logic, and everything they thought they understood about time travel. It starts with small distortions. A hallway light flickers when no bulb is out. A clock freezes at 2:17, then jumps forward an hour. Bree hears the stones humming in the distance, even though she's nowhere near done. The air feels heavy, electric, like a storm trying to break through the walls of time. Roger tries to reassure her, insisting it's stress or exhaustion, but Bree knows the difference between imagination and the stosam. She has lived through time's pull before. This is the same feeling, only stronger, more violent, more urgent than it happens. While tucking Jamie into bed, Bree looks down and sees something horrifying. For a split second, the walls around her ripple, bending like heat waves. The room shifts into an 18th century cottage before snapping back into their modern bedroom. Jamie sits up, wide-eyed, whispering, "He's coming for all of us." Roger embraces the boy, but Jamie's body feels cold. Not feverish cold, like he has been standing near the stones for hours. Bree's heart sinks. If Jamie can feel the pull, the barrier between the centuries is weakening in ways they can't control. Over the next days, Bree experiences more slips. She sees shadowy figures from the 1700s moving through her modern kitchen. She hears distant screams from battles long lost to history. Once, while standing outside Lelybrock, she sees the sky split part storm, part sunshine, as though two timelines are trying to occupy the same space. Roger begins documenting everything: dates, times, triggers, symptoms. The chaos appeals to his academic instincts, but even he can't rationalize what's happening. He remembers the devastation caused when he and Bree were pulled through time unwillingly. If this new phenomenon is stronger, more aggressive, it could tear their family apart. And then, the biggest warning arrives. Jamie starts sleepwalking. Not wandering aimlessly, but moving with purpose. Toward the woods. Toward the ancient path. Toward the stones. Every night, Bree finds him whispering words he shouldn't know. Words from centuries past. Names he has never heard. Threats spoken by someone who wants to break the Fraser line. Roger tries to protect them with logic and prayer. But Bree knows the truth. Someone is forcing the timelines to collide. Someone is pulling the past and future together like magnets. Someone wants them vulnerable. The McEnroy threat isn't just in Claire and Jamie's century, it has crossed into theirs. And it is closing in. Jamie Fraser, warrior, laird husband, father, has survived every battle fate has thrown at him. But never has he faced an enemy like this. An enemy without a century, without boundaries, without mercy. The message appears in the early morning, carved in clean, deliberate strokes into the bark of a tree just 20 yards from their cabin. Your blood ends with me. Jamie stares at the words until his jaw clenches and his fists tighten. This isn't the work of a random drifter. This is a declaration, a promise from someone who knows exactly who Jamie is, what he stands for, and what he loves. This is personal. Claire is shaken, but Jamie's reaction is different. He goes still. To still. Claire knows this version of him. The version forged on battlefields. The version sharpened in prison cells. The version born to protect with every breath he draws. He immediately takes it upon himself to shield the family. He sharpens his blade. He checks every door. He walks the ridge with a hunter's silence, eyes scanning every shadow. He tells Claire he's only being cautious. But she knows the truth. Jamie plans to face this threat alone. And that terrifies her. They've faced war, time travel, loss and heartbreak, but this enemy is unpredictable. He is unseen, unheard, untouchable. How can Jamie fight a man who moves between centuries? How can he protect them from something he cannot track or confront? Claire demands he stop shutting her out, but Jamie refuses. Not because he doubts her courage, but because he refuses to watch her suffer again. He lost her once. He lived without her once. He will never let that happen again. But his silence creates distance between them. A wedge neither wants but both feel. Claire can't bear the thought of Jamie walking into danger without her. She has lost enough people in her life to the cruelty of time, but the idea of losing Jamie again, to a man they don't understand, is unbearable. Jamie believes that if he can find the enemy first, he can end this. But Claire knows something he refuses to admit aloud. This isn't a fight. Jamie can win with steel. This is a battle of time, of fate, of a centuries-old vendetta fueled by magic and rage. And fear takes root between them. Fear unlike anything they've faced before. Because this enemy is not bound to a battlefield. He doesn't need muskets or blades. He can strike anywhere, in any year. He can target Brianna. He can target Roger. He can target the children. He can erase history itself, and Jamie, for the first time in decades, is terrified not of death but of losing everything his bloodline has built. The enemy has watched long enough. The threats are over. Now, he acts. One night at Fraser's Ridge, smoke curls into the air. Claire wakes coughing, her lungs burning. Jamie bolts upright, already grabbing water buckets. A fire has erupted near the barn, not large enough to spread uncontrollably, but large enough to scorch the earth, destroy tools, and send a message. You are not safe. You are never safe. Jamie investigates the scene and finds the same black feather, identical to the one left at their door. Claire recognizes the smell near the fire pit, sulfur, ash, and something unnatural, something that does not belong in the 1700s. Meanwhile, in the future, Bree and Roger experience something far more chilling. Laylee Brock's security cameras capture footage of a figure standing outside the gate at midnight. The man does not climb the fence. He does not open the door. He simply appears, standing still, staring at the house. Then, with a glitch-like flicker, he disappears. The timestamp on the footage is the exact same moment the fire began at the ridge. Separate centuries, same threat, same moment. The villain is no longer lurking. He is attacking. Then come the letters. Claire receives one first, delivered with no tracks, leading to or from the house. No horses disturbed, no doors opened, just a folded parchment sitting on her table as though it grew from the wood itself. Inside, in elegant handwriting, you should never have come through the stones. Claire drops it, her heart racing. Hours later, Bree receives her own message, slipped beneath the door of Laylee Brock. Your parents stole what belonged to me. Roger tries to dismiss the letters as threats from a stalker, until he opens the envelope and finds a feather inside. Identical. Impossibly identical. From two different centuries. Claire and Bree read their messages at the same moment across time, and both feel the same chill wash over them. This is no longer coincidence. No longer warning. No longer secrecy. This is war. The timelines begin tightening around them. like a rope pulling both ends of the family toward a single, catastrophic point. Jamie draws his sword. Roger checks the locks. Claire and Bree brace themselves for whatever comes next. Because the enemy has made his first move, and he will not stop until he takes everything. Everything. Season 8 has been building toward finally erupts. The timelines begin breaking apart. The past rises like a tidal wave, swelling with every choice the villain makes, and the future begins collapsing under the pressure. The stones grow louder. The visions intensify. The barriers that once kept the centuries separate thin until they are little more than veils of smoke. Claire sees flashes of futures that never existed. Jamie grown with no parents. Bree standing alone by a gravestone. Jamie's name missing from historical documents. She understands the horrifying truth. If Elias McEnroy succeeds, the Fraser bloodline will vanish, not through death, through erasure. History itself will rewrite who lived, who died, who mattered, and who never existed at all. Earthquakes shake Fraser's ridge. Not natural quakes, timequakes. The ground ripples, bending like fabric. Claire sees 20th century lights flicker inside an 18th century cabin. Bree sees 1700 soldiers marching across her modern lawn. The past and future grind against one another, fighting for dominance. Roger feels it first, the timeline pulling him backward, dragging him toward a year he cannot control. Jamie and Mandy scream as the air vibrates with the sound of 1,000 stones singing at once. Jamie understands what must happen. He prepares for a final battle, not fought with swords, muskets, or armies, but with destiny, with lineage, with the very threads of time. Bree holds her children close, knowing she may need to cross the stones again. Roger stands ready, whispering prayers he hasn't spoken since their last crossing. Claire faces the hardest truth of all. The only way to stop this collapse is to return to the place where it all began. Craina, done. The heart of every crossing, the birthplace of every twist, the gateway that both saved and doomed her life. Jamie takes her hand, refusing to let her face this alone. But Claire knows this fight is different. This isn't about saving her life. It's about saving their existence. To protect the future, she must return to the past. To protect her children, she must risk everything. Season 8 ends on the most devastating cliffhanger in Outlander history. Claire stands before the stones, the wind whipping around her, the echoes of time screaming in her ears. She looks back at Jamie one last time, a look filled with love, fear, and a promise that this won't be the end. Then the stones glow, the air shatters, and Claire steps forward, not to change history, but to save it. The smoke of the Revolutionary War still hangs behind Claire and Jamie, not only in the world around them, but inside them, in their hearts and in their bones, like a bruise that refuses to fade. They return to Fraser's Ridge seeking quiet, hoping the land that once brought them peace might heal what the war has taken. But the ridge is not the same. The trees seem to whisper old dangers. The wind feels heavy with memories. Even the silence carries the sense that something has changed forever. Jamie walks the land with the steady steps of a man who has fought too many battles and watched too many friends fall. A man who has survived more pain than any one life should hold. Yet there is still fire in him because Claire is at his side, because his family is alive, because his love refuses to die, even when the world tries to break it. Claire, however, feels the pull of time more sharply than ever. She carries the knowledge of 2 centuries in her hands, her mind, and her heart. She has tried again and again to save the people she loves with the skills she brought from the future, but those same skills now haunt her. Every life saved, every life lost, every moment she interfered with history has become a thread tied to a consequence she cannot yet see. She senses something coming, a ripple in the timeline, a disturbance she cannot explain but cannot ignore. She does not speak of it to Jamie. Not yet. She fears adding another burden to the man who has already carried more than fate ever should have placed on his shoulders. Instead, she watches him quietly, seeing the lines on his face deepen, the shadows beneath his eyes darken, knowing that peace may never belong to them. Meanwhile, Brianna and Roger face their own battles, but their war is not with muskets or redcoats. Their war is with time itself. Back in Lelybrook, in the future, they try to build stability for their children, especially young Jamie, whose ability to hear the Song of the Stones marks him as different. They hoped returning to their own century would keep him safe, but safety is a thin illusion. Strange events begin happening around them, warnings left without explanation, signs that someone has been watching, footsteps in the night that vanish before daylight. Roger tries to brush it off, shielding his family with optimism, but Brianna feels the truth deep inside her chest. Danger is not bound to one century. Time is not a wall that keeps enemies out. If someone wants to reach them, they will. Claire, Jamie, Brianna, each of them believes they have closed the doors behind them. But what they fail to see is this. The past does not stay locked away. The past waits. It grows in the dark. It remembers every slight, every wound, every act of mercy, and every act of cruelty. And now, the world they each stand in, whether the 18th century or the 20th, begins to crack open under the pressure of everything they once escaped. Because while the Frasers seek peace, someone else seeks revenge. Someone whose story was twisted by the choices the Frasers made. Someone who has learned to move through time with the same ease Claire once did. Someone who believes the Fraser family stole what was rightfully theirs and who is ready to destroy everything to take it back. This person has waited, traveled, changed their name, changed their face, crossed centuries to meet this moment. And as the new season begins, their first move is made not with violence, but with a whisper, a warning, a sign that the future is no longer safe. This is where the past begins, its slow, cold climb back into the present. And none of the Frasers are ready for what is coming. The danger stalking them does not begin with a shout, a gunshot, or a clash of steel. It begins quietly, like a storm forming far beyond the horizon, building its strength long before anyone sees the first dark cloud. And in Season 8, that storm takes the shape of a man whose life was shaped and shattered by Jamie Fraser. A figure spoken of in old warnings, whispered in taverns, forgotten in history books, believed by many to be long dead. But death is never final in a world where time refuses to flow in only one direction. This man does not rise from the grave, but from lineage, born of anger passed from father to son, carried through stories of betrayal and blood. His name is not one Claire or Jamie remembers, and that is what makes him so dangerous. Jamie has made many enemies, but not every enemy had the chance to face him. Some lived only with the stories their parents told, stories of a Highlander who ruined their lives, their power, or their future. As the stories grew, so did their hatred. The man now hunting the Frasers carries generations of anger, sharpened into a single purpose: to dismantle Jamie Fraser's world, piece by piece. He has spent years studying the Fraser family, gathering information with patience most men cannot hold. He learned the ways of time just as Claire once did, but through darker means. Where she traveled with wonder, he traveled with fury. Where she healed, he planned destruction. He stepped through time with one mission: make the Frasers pay. He knows Jamie's greatest strength is his loyalty. He knows Claire's greatest weakness is her compassion. He knows Brianna and Roger will do anything to protect their children. He knows every edge of their lives, every corner, every line, and he understands that to break them, he does not need to strike their bodies. He needs to strike their hearts. So he begins slowly, letting small signs appear like cracks spreading through glass. At Fraser's Ridge, Claire notices footprints where no one should have walked. A single unfamiliar feather placed beside the door. The feeling that someone stands outside the house at night. She tries to dismiss it, but the unease never leaves. Jamie feels it. Jamie feels it too, an instinct older than memory. A presence watching him from the trees. A shadow that vanishes the moment he turns. He tries to convince himself he is imagining it, but he knows better. Far in the future, Brianna begins receiving strange messages at work. Notes written in a hand she does not recognize. Some debts never fade. Some families must pay. The past remembers. Roger tries to comfort her, but Brianna can feel something familiar buried beneath the words. Something connected to their family across time. And she fears the same truth Claire feels. The same truth Jamie senses. Someone is coming for them. Someone who knows far too much about their past and their future. As the season races toward its final moments, Outlander delivers the most jaw-dropping ending the series has ever attempted, and it leaves the entire fandom breathless.